Welcome to Airgun Action, a fortnightly show dedicated to airgun shooting. In this week's episode, I'm taking a look at a Winchester break barrel, which promises fantastic value for money. But first up, let's see how the HikMicro Alpex day and night scope shapes up during a daytime pest control session. Right, I'm back out on the grey squirrels today, and as you can no doubt see, it's still very, very green for the time of year. Hopefully it'll be a bit more wintry by the time you get to watch this. Nonetheless though, the weather is turning a bit cooler. Certainly now the heavy acorn and beech mast crops that we've had are starting to dwindle, and that means that the squirrels are now showing up in bigger numbers around my feeding stations, so that's where I'm going to be targeting them today. Now, I have said before, explained the reasons for needing to control grey squirrels, and these woods in particular, they've caused a heck of a lot of damage with their bark stripping, really caused a lot of harm to the growth of the trees. They've stunted them, they've killed a lot. Now, there's more planting due here fairly soon, so the theory being we want to really drive down the numbers of grey squirrels to give those new saplings the best chance that we possibly can. As for the kit that I'm going to be using today, I've actually got the HikMicro Alpex digital day and night scope from Scott Country on again. Now, I've been using this scope a heck of a lot for my nighttime ratting with the infrared illuminator on over the past couple of months, but it's also got a brilliant colour day image, which is what I want to hopefully be able to show you today. So the illuminator's off, I'm just going to use it in day mode. As ever, I don't have time to explain the ins and outs of the workings of this scope here and now, but do take a look at the Scott Country website if you want to find out more about it. That is paired with the FX Dreamline Classic gun, sub 12 foot-pound, 177 caliber. It's incredibly quiet. I mean, it's a lovely, elegant looking gun too, but it's also very, very accurate, so should be a good choice for today. So that's the kit. I'm going to get myself into the hide, and all being well, we'll see a few squirrels. There's one, mate. There's one. Now, what I almost always do is wait for the squirrel to take a peanut and settle, and that just means that it's far less likely to suddenly move when I'm setting up for the shot. Just very quickly, the feeders that I've got here, now this is actually the same spot as where I settled during the recent roving squirrel shoot video that we made, and it's always a productive spot because there are a lot of beeches and a lot of oaks around here, so there's always plenty of natural food, especially towards the tail end of the summer going into the autumn. And I saw so many squirrels on that occasion that it just seemed like an obvious place to set up these feeding stations. Now, I've actually got two feeders here, and the main purpose of that is just to save me from having to make really frequent visits to keep them topped up once the squirrels are really onto them. The squirrels certainly are onto them now. I've already shot it a couple of times. I've made some decent bags, but it would appear that there are still a few here to be had. That one was initially pretty reluctant to settle, but as ever, there is just no point in being in a rush. These squirrels want to feed, so usually as long as you're patient, you will be rewarded with what should be a fairly straightforward shot. Now, I've not really spoken about the hide site yet. What I've got here is just a very basic net screen. As I've said, these squirrels want to feed. They're pretty distracted by the peanuts, so they're not that wary. I mean, I've not even got a head net on today. So it's a very simple hide. I'm under a big yew tree, so I've got a bit of cover from that. I'm just under 25 metres from the feeder, so it's not a great range, but in terms of taking shots, you don't want to make life any harder than it needs to be. So at this range, shooting off of sticks, there really is no excuse for missing. Virtually every shot is going to end in a nice, swift, humane kill, which is obviously what you want. Now, you can probably also hear that there are chainsaws whirring away behind me today. Now, these are working woods, they're managed for timber, so obviously apart from the impact that the squirrels are having on the native wildlife here, those trees and that tree damage that I spoke about earlier, that's the significance of grinding down their numbers just to give those trees the best possible chance of thriving. There's another one. I don't know if you could see through the shot there, but there was actually a pheasant foraging underneath the feeder. It was obviously pecking at crumbs of peanuts that the squirrels have been dropping, but the sound of that impacting pellet gave it a hell of a shock, and it just literally disappeared in a blur of wings. It's a jay, mate. That jay was absolutely necking my peanuts then. They're beautiful birds, but they are nest thieves, and you can control them under General Licence GL40 if they're posing a serious threat to woodland birds of conservation concern. There aren't a great deal of them in the woods here. I don't believe they're causing a great deal of harm. The landowner wants them left alone here, so that's fair enough. Another pretty fidgety one there. There's another one in the bag. You can probably see through the main camera that the light is really starting to dip now, but I've got to say the sight picture through the Alpex is still exceptionally bright. That said, I am going to wrap it up now because I want to have some decent, well, a bit of light left for picking up these shot squirrels and for refilling the feeder. I'm pleased with how it's gone though. I've not shot as many squirrels this evening as I had on my couple of previous visits, but Hopefully that is because I'm starting to chip away at the numbers of squirrels here now, and that's got to be a good thing. The Alpex there, proving that it isn't just made for targeting nocturnal pests after dark. Next up, let's take a look at the Winchester Model 45 break barrel from Just Airguns. As nice as it is to play with high-end airguns, I don't like to forget the fact that it's affordability and simplicity that attracts a lot of people to airgun shooting in the first place. Now, the airgun I've got here certainly ticks those boxes. It's the Winchester Model 45 from Just Airguns, and prices start at around £200. This is the RS version, which comes supplied with a silencer but no open sights. I've actually put my own scope on this one, but Just Airguns do some great package deals, and you can pick up this gun with a scope, mounts and a bag for well under £300, which I think makes it a really appealing proposition for people just starting out in airgun shooting. The Model 45 is a nice looking and very well proportioned airgun, which I reckon should be manageable for younger shooters in their teens. Now, it weighs a pretty modest 2.5 kilos without a scope mounted, and length is 116 centimeters including the silencer, which I reckon is pretty standard for a break barrel Springer of this type. The ambidextrous stock is made from beech. Now, it's quite light in colour, but I do like its flash-free finish, and I still think it's pretty kind on the eye. Now, the fore end is nice and wide and feels really good in the leading hand, and that's adorned with some fairly basic panels of laser cut checkering on either side. Now, the same checkering is also present on both sides of the pistol grip. The design of the pistol grip is relatively basic and it's got quite a shallow angle, but I didn't really notice it compromising my trigger attack in any way at all. Shooters who want to use a really large scope and high mounts may find the cheek piece a little bit on the low side. However, I found it perfectly fine with the small scope and fairly low mounts that I've got on here. Now, the stock is finished at the butt end with a simple but very effective rubber recoil pad, and there is a very subtle black plastic spacer between that and the wooden stock. Now, the metalwork and engineering look to be very tidily finished, and not just for a gun at this price point. I actually think it's on a par with guns costing significantly more. Now, scope mounting is via an intermediate dovetail rail, which helps to reduce scope creep caused by recoil. However, if you do want to get that scope mounted a little bit lower to give you better eye scope alignment, you can quite easily remove this intermediate rail and attach your mounts directly to the dovetail rails that are machined into the cylinder. Now, that should lower the line of the scope by probably about 10 millimeters, and with decent mounts, I don't think you'll have any serious problems with scope creep. Barrel length is around 32 centimeters, although the extra length of the silencer extends it to about 50 centimeters, which means there's plenty of leverage for cocking the gun. Also, the stippled finish of that silencer also means it's really nice and grippy. Now, the actual cocking stroke is very smooth and manageable, and obviously that's due in part to that extra leverage. Loading is direct to the breech, and the lock-up mechanism feels nice and secure. The Model 45 is equipped with an adjustable two-stage trigger that features a nice long blade with a gentle curve and a grooved face.
Now we seem to be on a bit of a roll when it comes to triggers that are set up properly in the factory, and this is another one of them. Now the first stage is fairly long and light, and it comes to a very clear stop before a predictable brake with no obvious creep. There is a lever type safety catch positioned towards the rear of the cylinder just above the trigger blade. Now it's manually operated, and you pull it back to make the gun safe and then push it forwards when you're ready to shoot. Now this test gun is 177 caliber, but the Model 45 is also available in 2.2. Now this one is churning out a muzzle energy of around 10.8 foot-pounds, and it's doing it very consistently with a variation within 7 feet per second over a 10-shot string. Now that's better than a lot of PCPs. Now the actual firing cycle feels very good. It's smooth, it's quick, and there's very little reverberation. As with any recoiling airgun, you have to do your bit to get the best from this Springer, but its potential is impressive. With a bit of practice, it's capable of sub 15mm groups at 25 meters and sub 20mm groups at 30 meters. Now that means, apart from being a great plinking airgun, it also has the power and precision to tackle small pests over sensible ranges. So, that's the Winchester Model 45 RS. As I said at the start, Just Airguns have got some brilliant package and combo deals on it, so do take a look at their website. Now I've got to say, I've been really impressed with this little brake barrel Springer. It's affordable, but there are absolutely no obvious signs of corner cutting when it comes to performance and build quality. Now, apart from being a great choice for newcomers, I also think it would be a really good option for more experienced airgunners who want a decent brake barrel but don't want to spend a fortune.
That's all we've got time for in this episode, but we'll be back again in 2 weeks with much, much more. Thank you for watching, enjoy your shooting and stay safe, and don't forget to take a look at those subscription offers for Airgunner and Airgun World magazines.